The moment the strange archives were discovered, the Council of Earth knew this was no ordinary find. A group of top leaders, scientists, and military experts gathered in a high-tech command center deep below the Earth's surface. The room was dimly lit, with screens flashing data, and the air was heavy with anticipation. The archives they had uncovered were not just historical records. They were something far more enigmatic. The records were written in a language no one on Earth recognized, a language that wasn't even from Earth. This was the beginning of a mystery that would shake the foundations of everything humanity thought it knew. The head of the council, General Alexandra Pierce, stood at the front of the room. Her face was stern, her mind racing as she read the first reports. The war archives contained detailed accounts of Earth's past wars, but they were written in an alien script, something no human scholar had seen before. The language, though ancient, had been preserved perfectly within the documents. It was as though the archives were waiting to be discovered. "These records can't just be coincidental," General Pierce said, her voice echoing in the cold, silent room. "Someone put these here on purpose. Someone, or something. And it's up to us to find out why." The scientists working on deciphering the language were already at their desks, their eyes glued to their screens. Dr. Amelia Thorpe, the lead linguist for the council, was the first to speak. "It's not a language we can translate with our current systems. It's too complex, too alien, but there are some patterns, some repeating symbols that could give us a clue." Dr. Thorpe had spent years working on extraterrestrial languages, but nothing like this had ever crossed her desk. This language wasn't just complicated, it felt ancient, as though it had been designed with an intelligence far beyond Earth's most advanced minds. She could tell it wasn't random. There was purpose in every stroke, every symbol, but the purpose eluded her. General Pierce's eyes narrowed. "If we can't understand it, then what can we do?" "We start by looking at it differently," Dr. Thorpe suggested. "Perhaps the key to unlocking it isn't to translate word by word, but to understand its structure first. This language could be based on something completely different from anything we know." The council spent days poring over the records. In the process, they discovered something extraordinary. The symbols in the archives were not just text. They were more like blueprints, detailed accounts of war strategies, plans, and battles fought by unknown enemies. But as the team continued to analyze the text, something else started to surface. The language was eerily similar to one found in ancient alien transmissions. The Xilorians, an alien race believed to have existed thousands of years ago, used a dialect strikingly similar to what they were seeing in the archives. "Is it possible?" General Pierce muttered under her breath. "Could this be Xilorian writing? But how?" The Xilorians disappeared long before human civilization began to take shape. How could their language be in our war archives? The implications of this discovery hit the council hard. The Xilorians were considered an extinct species, one of the most powerful and advanced civilizations ever to exist in the galaxy. They had vanished without a trace, leaving no evidence of their presence behind. No one knew what happened to them or where they went. All that remained were faint legends and myths about their power. Now, the council was staring at evidence that suggested the Xilorians had a direct connection to humanity's past. But why? And how? Commander Liam O'Connor, the military strategist for the council, leaned forward. "This is bigger than we thought. We might be looking at records of human history, but written by an alien species. The Xilorians might have been involved in Earth's wars. But how is that possible?" Dr. Thorpe examined the symbols again, this time more closely. "We need to dig deeper. The language doesn't just describe wars. It describes tactics, weapons, and strategies. But they seem alien. I've never seen anything like it before. This isn't just a record. It feels like a guide, a lesson. These records were made to prepare someone, or something, for battle." Her words hung heavy in the room. The council was no longer just looking at historical documents. They were looking at something much more important. These archives weren't just written by aliens. They had been left behind with a purpose. And the purpose was unclear, but it was definitely tied to Earth's future. "We need to understand this before it's too late," General Pierce said firmly. "The Xilorians may be gone, but their legacy is here. And if they're tied to Earth's wars, we must know why. This knowledge could change everything." The room went quiet as everyone absorbed the magnitude of what they had just discovered. The archives weren't just ancient records. They were a message, a key to understanding Earth's place in a much larger galactic puzzle. If the Xilorians had truly been involved in Earth's wars, it meant humanity had unknowingly been part of a much grander scheme. And now, Earth's survival could depend on understanding this hidden history. In the days that followed, the Council sent out teams of experts, linguists, historians, military strategists, and alien communication specialists, to dive deeper into the Xilorian connection. The archives held secrets, and those secrets were slowly being unveiled, one layer at a time. But every answer led to more questions. Why had the Xilorians chosen to record Earth's wars? Were they simply observers, or had they been orchestrating events? And why was their language tied to these records? As General Pierce sat in her office late at night, staring at the latest report, she couldn't shake the feeling that the Council had just unlocked a door to something far greater than they could ever have imagined. The war archives were no longer just a relic of the past. They were the beginning of something that could change the future of humanity forever. The countdown had begun, and Earth's role in a galactic struggle was only beginning to unfold. The Council knew one thing for sure: the discovery of these archives would alter everything. And they had to prepare, because once they understood the full extent of the Xilorian involvement, the game would be entirely different. The moment the strange archives were discovered, the Council of Earth knew this was no ordinary find. A group of top leaders, scientists, and military experts gathered in a high-tech command center deep below Earth's surface. The room was dimly lit, with screens flashing data, and the air was heavy with anticipation. The archives they had uncovered were not just historical records. They were something far more enigmatic. The records were written in a language no one on Earth recognized, a language that wasn't even from Earth. This discovery felt like the beginning of a mystery that could change the fate of humanity forever. The head of the Council, General Alexander Pierce, stood at the front of the room. Her face was stern, her mind racing as she read the first reports. The war archives contained detailed accounts of Earth's past wars, but they were written in an alien script, something no human scholar had seen before. The language, though ancient, had been preserved perfectly within the documents. It was as though the archives had been waiting for someone to find them. General Pierce's voice echoed in the cold, silent room as she addressed her team. "These records can't just be coincidental. Someone put these here on purpose. Someone, or something. And it's up to us to find out why." The scientists immediately began to work, hoping to decode the strange language. Dr. Amelia Thorpe, the lead linguist for the Council, was the first to speak. "It's not a language we can translate with our current systems. It's too complex, too alien, but there are some patterns, some repeating symbols that could give us a clue." Dr. Thorpe had spent years studying extraterrestrial languages, but nothing like this had ever crossed her desk. This language wasn't just difficult. It felt ancient, almost as if it had been designed by a mind far more advanced than anything Earth had ever encountered. She could sense that it wasn't random. Every symbol seemed to hold purpose, but the meaning was still just out of reach. General Pierce's eyes narrowed as she looked over the data. "If we can't understand it, then what do we do?" she asked, her voice filled with frustration. "We start by looking at it differently," Dr. Thorpe suggested. "Perhaps the key to unlocking it isn't to translate word by word, but to understand its structure first. This language could be based on something completely different from anything we know." And so, the team shifted their approach. They started analyzing the text not just as a written language, but as a series of intricate patterns, Slowly, they began to notice something unusual. The symbols had a structure that mirrored known languages, yet there were key differences. It wasn't until days later, after countless hours of intense research, that a breakthrough came. One of the symbols in the archives matched a fragment of an ancient alien dialect that had been found in the ruins of a distant, long-forgotten star system. The alien race believed to have used this dialect was the Exhilarating, an advanced species that had disappeared thousands of years ago, leaving no trace of their existence behind. The connection was undeniable. The language of the archives was closely related to the Exhilarating tongue. But how could this be? How could Earth's war archives be linked to a species that had vanished long before humans had even walked the Earth? The Council's room fell silent as the implications of the discovery began to sink in. Commander Liam O'Connor, the military strategist, spoke up. "This is bigger than we thought. If these archives were written by the Exhilarating, we might be looking at something far more dangerous than we realized. How could they be involved in Earth's wars? Did they have some kind of influence on our history?" Dr. Thorpe began reviewing the records again, her mind racing. "This isn't just a language," she said, almost to herself. "It's something more. These aren't just words. They're like blueprints, records of tactics, strategies, and battle plans. Whoever wrote these documents had access to Earth's wars and knowledge of weapons beyond our understanding. This feels more like a guide, a set of instructions." The pieces were starting to fit together, but many questions remained unanswered. If the Exhilarating had been involved in Earth's wars, what role had they played? Were they merely observers, or had they been orchestrating events from the shadows? Why would they record such detailed accounts of Earth's conflicts, and what was their true purpose? General Pierce's voice broke the tension. "We need to understand this. The Exhilarating may be gone, but their legacy is here. And if they're tied to Earth's wars, we must know why. We can't let this sit here and rot." This knowledge could change everything. The room was filled with a sense of urgency. The Council had just unlocked a mystery that could have vast implications for Earth's future. The archives weren't simply relics of the past. They were a message, and the Council was determined to uncover its full meaning. As they began analyzing the archives more deeply, it became clear that the Exhilarating weren't just observing Earth's wars. They were somehow influencing them. Their involvement was no coincidence, and now Earth was left to face the consequences of this hidden history. The team worked tirelessly, poring over every document, every scrap of information. With each new discovery, the mystery deepened. The Exhilarating had been connected to Earth's wars in ways no one could have predicted, and the truth behind the archives was becoming clearer. But as the Council continued to dig, they realized that uncovering the past was only the beginning. The real challenge lay in understanding what the Exhilarating had left behind, and why they had left it for humanity to find. The Council knew that Earth's place in the universe was about to change forever. As the days passed, the Council's investigation into the mysterious archives deepened, and the pieces of the puzzle started to come together. The alien language, once an impenetrable code, slowly began to reveal its secrets under the careful eyes of Earth's brightest minds. Dr. Thorpe and her team were able to decipher more of the language, and with each translation, the picture became clearer. The war archives weren't simply historical records. They were detailed accounts of galactic conflicts in which Earth had unknowingly played a pivotal role. At first, the Council thought the Exhilarating had merely observed Earth's wars, but as the translations continued, it became apparent that the Exhilarating were far more involved than anyone had initially thought. The archives contained battle strategies, records of weapons used in Earth's wars, and descriptions of tactics that were far beyond the understanding of any human military. The Exhilarating had left behind a map of sorts, an intricate design outlining the rise of humanity's involvement in a much larger galactic war. The deeper the Council dug into the records, the more unsettling the discoveries became. Earth's wars had not been isolated conflicts. They were part of a grander cosmic struggle. The documents began to reveal patterns of intervention, not by Earth's own forces, but by an outside influence. Alien races like the Exhilarating, who had subtly guided human history. The archives seem to suggest that these interventions had shaped Earth's military and technological development, pushing humanity into wars that were, perhaps, never meant to be fought. The most troubling realization was that humanity's wars weren't just part of Earth's history. They were part of a much larger galactic game. The Exhilarating had been involved in the affairs of other civilizations, orchestrating conflicts in the hope of strengthening or weakening certain powers. It was clear that humanity had been used as pawns in a cosmic struggle that spanned the stars, a struggle in which the Earth had unknowingly played a role. As General Pierce and the other leaders of the Council reviewed the records, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were looking at something far more sinister than they had imagined. The Exhilarating had not just been watching. They had been manipulating the events of Earth's history. Every major conflict on Earth seemed to have been influenced in some way by the alien race. There were indications that the Exhilarating had been pushing humanity into wars for their own unknown reasons, perhaps to test Earth's ability to survive in a galaxy full of far more advanced civilizations. The archives contained cryptic warnings, too. Scattered throughout the records were references to a coming conflict, one that would be far worse than any war humanity had ever fought. The Exhilarating had predicted that humans would one day face a test, a challenge that would determine whether humanity could rise to the occasion and take its place among the stars, or whether it would be destroyed. The Council knew that this test was coming, but they didn't know when. Commander O'Connor had been silent for a long time, his eyes locked on one of the records that described the last great war the Exhilarating had fought before they disappeared. The Exhilarating had left a message, hidden within the records, warning that the ultimate test would involve humanity's capacity for violence and survival. The document hinted at a dangerous enemy that would soon appear, one that would challenge humanity in ways it couldn't imagine. "We've been training for wars that were never really ours to fight," Commander O'Connor said, his voice low. "But the war that's coming, it's real. And it's bigger than anything we've ever faced." General Pierce nodded grimly. "We need to prepare, and we need to prepare quickly. This isn't just about fighting for survival anymore. We've been part of a bigger plan for far too long. It's time we figure out where we fit in all this." The Council members began to understand the true nature of the archives. These records were not just a history lesson. They were a roadmap, showing how Earth had been caught in the crossfire of a galactic struggle. And now, humanity's time had come to either ascend as a true power in the galaxy or fall to a much stronger force. The stakes had never been higher, and the weight of the knowledge they had uncovered pressed down on them like a heavy stone. The final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. The archives were not merely a remnant of a long-lost race. They were a warning, a guide for humanity's future. The Exhilarating had been preparing Earth for something much greater than any war fought on the surface of this planet. It was as if Earth had been chosen for something beyond their understanding. The real question now was whether humanity was ready to face what was coming. Would they rise to the occasion, or would they fall like so many civilizations before them? The Council was beginning to realize that they were no longer just leaders of a single planet. They were now players in a game that spanned the galaxy. The future of Earth and humanity's place in the cosmos rested in their hands. As the Council continued to piece together the information from the war archives, a sense of urgency began to build. The stakes were higher than they had ever anticipated. They had uncovered fragments of ancient records that told of galactic-scale conflicts, battles that transcended planets and civilizations. The deeper they looked, the more disturbing the truth became. Earth had not only been a spectator in this galactic struggle, it had been an active participant, albeit unknowingly. The Exhilarating, long thought to be extinct, had been pulling strings from the shadows, guiding humanity's path through wars and conflicts for millennia. Their reasons for this were still unclear, but what was becoming increasingly evident was that the Exhilarating had seen something in humanity, something they had planned to use. The records, once thought to be simple history, now seemed to be filled with warnings, coded messages, and strategies for preparing for something far worse than any war Earth had experienced. General Pierce, who had been leading the investigation, felt the weight of the discovery pressing down on her. "We've been pawns," she muttered, her eyes fixed on one of the documents detailing humanity's early space missions. "We've been played by forces we didn't even know existed." Commander O'Connor stood beside her, his brow furrowed. "What's worse," he said, "is that the Xilorians seem to be preparing us for something. We've been fighting wars on Earth, but we were never told what it was really all for. This was all part of something bigger, and we've been too focused on our own survival to see it." The record spoke of something ancient, something that had been slowly creeping toward Earth, something that was about to make itself known. There were mentions of an enemy unlike any other, a force that would come from beyond the known galaxy, one that had been watching humanity for centuries. The Xilorians had been grooming Earth to face this force, giving them the tools and the knowledge to survive. But the question remained, why? The archives also spoke of a series of tests, challenges that humanity had unknowingly undergone, each designed to measure their readiness for the final confrontation. The first test had been Earth's wars, designed to test humanity's ability to fight and survive. The second was their rapid technological advancements, which had been pushed forward by the alien influence. And now, it seemed that the time for the final test was approaching. "It all leads to this," General Pierce said, her voice tense. "The Xilorians weren't just interested in Earth's wars. They wanted to see if humanity could withstand something even worse. And now, we've reached the final stage." Dr. Thorpe, who had been working tirelessly to decode the language, stumbled across a particular set of symbols that struck her as odd. The symbols, although resembling the Xilorian language, were written in a more cryptic form. As she focused on them, she realized that they weren't just a warning. They were instructions. The records described how to fight the coming enemy, but the instructions were vague, incomplete, almost as if they had been purposefully left unfinished. "Whoever wrote this didn't want us to know everything," Dr. Thorpe remarked, her voice filled with disbelief. "It's like they stopped midway through, leaving us with only part of the puzzle." General Pierce's eyes narrowed. "Who would leave us with just pieces of the picture? And why now, after all these years? We were meant to be ready, but are we?" The council realized that they were now facing something far larger than anything they had prepared for. The war archives were not just a historical account. They were a guide, a tool to help humanity face an unimaginable threat. But the question remained, were they prepared for what was coming? Could they decode the final pieces of the puzzle in time? In the coming days, the council sent out their best experts, military strategists, historians, alien communicators, and scientists, to analyze every piece of the archives. But despite their best efforts, something didn't sit right. The closer they got to unlocking the full meaning of the Xilorian archives, the more they realized that they weren't dealing with a simple enemy. They were dealing with something far beyond their comprehension. The cryptic messages within the archives seemed to point toward a singular entity, an ancient force that had been waiting for the right time to emerge. The Xilorians had warned that this force was unlike any enemy humanity had ever encountered, and it was only a matter of time before it would arrive. As the team continued to decode the language, they began to find strange references to a place that no human had ever ventured, a place far beyond the edges of Earth's known universe. The coordinates that were hidden within the symbols led to a star system that had been previously thought to be uninhabitable. Yet the archives suggested that something was waiting there, something that had the power to destroy entire galaxies. General Pierce stood before the team, her face set in determination. "We don't have much time. If this enemy is real, if it's out there waiting for us, then we need to act fast. We can't afford to be passive anymore. We've been preparing for this unknowingly, but now we know the truth. We must prepare Earth for war, not just for survival, but for the fight of our lives." The council knew they couldn't face this new enemy alone. It was clear that the galaxy was not just a collection of planets, but a vast network of civilizations, many of which had been involved in Earth's history without their knowledge. The question was no longer about how to fight. It was about who they could trust. Would Earth stand alone, or could they form alliances with other alien species who might know more about this coming threat? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain. The final battle was approaching, and Earth's destiny was no longer just in its own hands. The archives had unlocked a new chapter in human history, one that was far from what anyone could have imagined. As the Council gathered to discuss their next steps, they knew that they were on the brink of something far greater than anything they had ever prepared for. The galaxy was full of secrets, and now, Earth was about to uncover the most dangerous secret of all. As Earth's leaders gathered to discuss the unfolding revelations, an overwhelming sense of urgency filled the air. The war archives had revealed more than they had ever imagined. Not just a hidden history of Earth's wars, but a much darker, far-reaching plan that would force humanity to confront a galactic force, unlike any they had ever seen. General Pierce stood at the forefront, her mind racing as the team analyzed the final fragments of the archives. The truth was finally out, and the Council was now tasked with preparing Earth for an impending battle that could very well determine humanity's future in the galaxy. The documents hinted at a terrifying entity that had been waiting for the right time to strike. This enemy, whose name remained elusive in the archives, was described as an ancient, unstoppable force, something so powerful that even the Exhilarating, with all their knowledge and military might, had failed to defeat it. The Exhilarating had come close to uncovering its true nature, but they had been forced to retreat before they could fully understand what they were facing. The archives ended abruptly, leaving humanity with only fragments of crucial information. What little they had managed to decode painted a horrifying picture. The enemy was not a single species, but an entire force, a destructive wave that consumed everything in its path, erasing entire star systems from existence. General Pierce's voice cut through the tension in the room. "We've known war our whole history. We fought for survival, for resources, for power. But we've never faced something like this. It's not just a war, it's an extinction event." Commander O'Connor nodded gravely. The Exhilarating didn't just leave us these archives to learn from our past. They left them because they knew that we would be the ones to fight this war. It's not just about our history, it's about our future. The archives also revealed that Earth had been in a unique position, unknowingly positioned to be the key to either stopping or unleashing this devastating force. The Exhilarating, while guiding humanity through its wars, had also ensured that Earth would eventually develop the military and technological advancements necessary to face a threat of this magnitude. Every war humanity had fought, the battles that had shaped the planet's history, were part of a larger, deliberate preparation for this coming crisis. The Council's scientists were the first to understand the significance of this. Earth's rapid technological development, especially in the areas of weaponry, energy, and space exploration, was no accident. Every war had pushed humanity to develop new weapons and strategies, building Earth's arsenal to unprecedented levels. Yet the Council knew that no matter how advanced Earth's technology had become, they were still far behind the unknown enemy that awaited them. "We've been preparing for this without even realizing it," Dr. Thorpe said, looking up from the data. "The Exhilarating have given us the tools, but they've left us with gaps. We don't have all the answers. We don't even know what this enemy looks like, or how it will attack. We may not have all the answers, but we do have the archives," General Pierce responded. "And that's where we start. We need to take everything we've learned, everything we've discovered, and start building our response. If we're going to fight back, we need to be ready for anything." In the days that followed, Earth's best and brightest minds worked tirelessly to create a defense plan. Military strategies were discussed, alliances with other alien civilizations were explored, and every last fragment of the Exhilarating archives was analyzed. But no matter how much they discovered, the Council could not shake the feeling that there was something else out there. something they hadn't found in the archives, something that the Xalorians had deliberately hidden. The more they researched, the more questions arose. What was this enemy really? How could they be stopped? Were there more hidden archives, more clues scattered across the galaxy? The Council knew they had to act fast. As the weeks passed, they began deploying Earth's forces across the planet. Military divisions were reorganized, with the best soldiers, scientists, and strategists now working together to build Earth's most powerful weaponry. The global space defense network was upgraded, and fleets of warships were prepared for interstellar combat. Every country on Earth came together, unified by the knowledge that they were no longer just defending their own planet. They were fighting for the survival of the entire human race. But despite all their preparations, there was one crucial piece missing: the enemy's nature. The Xalorians had warned that this force would be unlike any enemy humanity had ever encountered. It wasn't just powerful, it was relentless, a force of nature that could devour entire star systems without breaking a sweat. The more they searched the archives, the more they realized they had only scratched the surface. And then, just as the Council began to make headway in their preparations, a chilling transmission arrived. It came through Earth's newly upgraded communications array, its source coming from a distant part of the galaxy. The message was short, but it sent a wave of cold dread throughout the room. It was a warning. "We are coming. You will be judged. The test begins now." The Council stared at the screen, their minds racing. There was no mistaking it. This was the enemy. The test the Xalorians had warned them about had begun. Humanity's greatest challenge had arrived, and Earth was about to face its ultimate reckoning. The Council understood that the time for preparation was over. The enemy was closing in, and Earth's survival depended on how well they could adapt to the coming storm. The fate of humanity no longer rested in the hands of generals or leaders. It now rested in the hands of every person on Earth. This was no longer a fight for power or territory. It was a fight for survival, and no one knew if humanity would make it out alive. As General Pierce looked around at the members of the Council, she knew one thing for certain. Earth was no longer just a planet in the galaxy. It was the final battlefield in a war that spanned across the stars. The ultimate test had begun. The only question now was whether humanity could survive it. The enemy's arrival came sooner than expected. The chilling transmission had sparked fear, but it also ignited a spark of determination. Earth had no choice but to face the reality. The war was no longer a distant threat. It was here. The enemy that the Xalorians had warned of, the one that had been hinted at in the cryptic records, was not some mythical force, but an imminent, destructive power that was now on Earth's doorstep. The Council quickly understood that they had little time to waste. The first wave of the enemy's approach was subtle, almost imperceptible, like a shadow creeping across the stars. But as the Council's space defenses picked up unusual activity near the edges of the solar system, the reality began to set in. Earth wasn't just a target. It was the focal point of an impending annihilation. The unknown enemy had already begun its advance, moving faster than anything humanity had ever seen, cloaked in the vastness of space. Dr. Thorpe worked day and night, scouring every inch of the Xalorian archives, looking for any clues that could give Earth the upper hand. The cryptic symbols, the fragmented records, and the unfinished messages all hinted at something terrible. Humanity's final trial wasn't going to be a fight of strength or weapons. It was a test of survival itself. The archives had been designed to prepare humanity for a new kind of warfare, one that involved more than just military might. The enemy wasn't just about overwhelming power. It was about breaking the spirit of their foes, making them question everything they had ever known. This enemy was not just a physical threat. It was a psychological weapon. General Pierce had gathered the leadership from around the world to discuss their next move. In the war room, the holographic map of the solar system displayed strange anomalies at the edge of the galaxy. Earth's space defense forces, though prepared for most threats, were now bracing themselves for something completely different. This enemy had the ability to manipulate time and space. Their first assault was an invisible wave of disruption, causing sudden and erratic fluctuations in gravity and energy fields across Earth's atmosphere. Ships in orbit reported strange, seemingly random bursts of energy, disabling communication systems and grounding aircraft. "This is not a traditional enemy," Commander O'Connor observed, his face grim. "Whatever they are, they have the ability to disrupt everything we rely on. It's like they're testing us." Pierce nodded, her eyes cold with determination. "We can't wait for them to make the first move. We need to hit them now, before they can gain a foothold." As Earth's fleet prepared for war, the Council continued to decipher the final clues from the archives. It was in the last piece of the puzzle that the real truth was uncovered. A hidden text, buried deep within the archives, revealed that the Xilorians had encountered the same enemy long before Earth's time. The enemy was not one species, it was a collective of entities from across the galaxy, drawn together by a singular purpose: to eradicate those they deemed unfit to survive in the universe. This collective had a name: the Voidborn. The Voidborn were not bound by the rules of biology or conventional warfare. They were beings that existed in multiple dimensions at once, capable of moving through space and time as easily as one might walk through a door. They had no physical form in the way humans understood it, and their attacks were designed to induce fear, despair, and confusion. The Xilorians had tried to fight them, but they had ultimately failed. The Voidborn had wiped out entire civilizations, not through brute force, but by causing those civilizations to turn on themselves. By warping reality, they made enemies of allies, allies of enemies, and eventually pushed civilizations into self-destruction. The revelation hit the Council like a blow. Earth was not just facing an enemy that could wipe them off the map. They were facing an enemy that could make them lose their will to fight, cause confusion, break their spirits, and turn them against each other. Commander O'Connor was the first to speak after the silence fell. This is worse than we thought. The Voidborn don't just destroy, they manipulate. They break your mind before they break your body." General Pierce clenched her fists, staring at the data. "We have to be ready. The Xilorians couldn't stop them, but we can't let the same thing happen to us." The Council began making preparations, but there was one glaring issue. Earth had no experience with this kind of warfare. The Voidborn didn't rely on traditional weapons. They didn't need to. They attacked the very fabric of reality itself. Earth's military might would be useless against an enemy who could warp the laws of physics, turn the very world around them into a nightmare. The next few days were filled with chaos. Earth's military forces scrambled to prepare for an assault they didn't understand. Communications from deep space continued to be interrupted by strange pulses, and ships returning from the outer reaches of the solar system reported terrifying phenomena. Entire fleets had disappeared without a trace. The enemy was already here, and they were toying with Earth. It was at that moment that Dr. Thorpe made another breakthrough. She discovered an ancient document in the Xilorian archives that outlined a possible defense mechanism, a way to combat the Voidborn's ability to warp reality. The method, however, was not easy. It required a deep understanding of the fabric of space-time, combined with the power of human ingenuity and willpower. The Xilorians had failed to harness this power, but humanity, with their unique ability to push past their limits, might stand a chance. The Council quickly assembled a team of scientists and engineers to begin developing the weapon. They called it the Aegis Protocol, a device that could create a localized field, an anomaly in space-time, that would negate the Voidborn's ability to manipulate reality within that field. The only problem: the Aegis Protocol would require vast amounts of energy to function, more than Earth's current technology could generate. They would need to find a way to power it, or risk facing the Voidborn with nothing but the sheer will to survive. As Earth's forces began to prepare for the inevitable battle, the Voidborn's influence started to seep deeper into the planet. The enemy wasn't just attacking from the outside. They were already inside, manipulating the minds of Earth's leaders, causing divisions and sowing distrust. The psychological war had begun. But despite the odds, there was one thing the Voidborn didn't account for: humanity's unyielding resilience. The more the enemy pushed, the harder Earth fought back. The Council, united by the knowledge that they were fighting not just for Earth's survival, but for the survival of every soul in the galaxy, steeled themselves for the final battle. Humanity had been tested for centuries. Now, the test was about to reach its terrifying climax. Would Earth rise to the challenge, or would they fall victim to the Voidborn's manipulations and overwhelming power?